Now, what does Fox News and Glenn Beck and the right-wing noise machine do with their coverage of a health care reform bill that is actually the law of the land? It was a banner day for Democrats, not just because of the image of their president signing the health care reform bill on page 1 of every newspaper in the land. The first major polling taken entirely after the House vote seemed to be moving their way. Before passage, 45% said the bill should pass, 48% said no. But after passage, 50% were pleased or enthusiastic about it, while 42% were angry or disappointed. Further, 49% said it was a good thing for the country, while 40% said it was a bad thing. As for Fox News coverage of the signing ceremony, it was almost comical. This was the bill that Fox News convinced its viewers was the worst thing Congress could do to America. And on the day it was signed into law, Megyn Kelly spent about 23 seconds on it. That was typical of the day's coverage over at Fox. And Glenn Beck yesterday barely mentioned the health care bill for the first 45 minutes of his show. When he finally got around to it, he somehow compared the bill's passage to a child being spanked by its mother, and then he made a strange Beckian reference to picking up a gun.
Haven't we just been spanked? Doesn't most of the country feel like they've been spanked overhead to health care? You bet. I do. You do. A lot of people do. Some people are celebrating. A lot of people don't. If you loved us, what would you do? You would hug us. But they're not. They're going for illegal immigration. What is it that these evolutionaries want? You pick up a gun? Have you ever thought of that? These people have. Because possibly, maybe the question should be asked, maybe they're tired of evolution and maybe they are waiting for revolution.
Let's bring in the president of Media Matters, Eric Burns. Good evening, Eric. Listen, I need help here because yes, I'm not a frequent Beck watcher. I can't quite tell. What is he asking for there? Which does he want more, to be spanked or to be hugged? What's going on there?
Well, I can tell you, Lawrence, he certainly needs a good spanking. That's one thing I know for sure. But look, one of Glenn Beck's stated goals is the destruction of the entire progressive movement. And in that clip, as I understand it, he was alluding to progressive leaders that he was suggesting may pick up a gun. This is very common language for Glenn Beck. It's a very common kind of, violent type rhetoric that he employs to try to, discredit progressives, Democrats, and anyone that really doesn't share his political viewpoint, something that we see often on a show.
Yeah, can you walk me through the gun piece again? Because I really mean it. I'm not kidding around. I do not understand what it is he's trying to say. He's clearly trying to say something. He says, you pick up a gun. Have you ever thought of that? These people have. Yes,
and he's talking about, on the chalkboard, he had founding fathers on one side and some progressive leaders on the other side. I believe one of them was Andy Stern of SEIU. And his point was to try to obviously drive a wedge in between those two crowds of folks and say these people have thought about it, meaning the progressive leaders of the progressive movement have thought about picking up a gun. But that, of course, the founding father, the implication is the founding fathers never would. Of course, if you knew his history better, they actually were the ones that did in the revolution. But really, this is just a continuing part of Glenn Beck's ongoing campaign to destroy the progressive movement. And frankly, I'm concerned perhaps even incite a revolution in this country. Lawrence, it's not far off from anything you said in the past.
Well, look, I mean, this is a country that has all too regularly had shots taken at its president, including President Reagan, one of the gods of Fox News. What is it that allows them at that network to be so casual about references to taking up a gun when discussing opposition to politicians? I mean, this is such an obvious thing to stay away from. Roger Ailes, who runs that network, worked for Ronald Reagan, saw Ronald Reagan get shot, almost taken out. What are they missing? What don't they get about what's wrong with this?
Well, Lawrence, they're not a news network. They're a political operation, and a rather fearsome one at that, because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They have absolutely no accountability to anybody but advertising dollars. So folks like Glenn Beck are free to get up and say whatever kind of incendiary garbage they want, and he does it every single night. I mean, this is certainly extreme and it's certainly alarming, but it's not out of character with what we've seen from Glenn Beck over the last year and a half, and it ought to explain to a lot of folks why there are so many confused, angry Tea Partiers out there who really have been lied to and misled and don't really understand what this healthcare debate has been about, because they spend a lot of time watching Glenn Beck.
Quickly, Eric, before you go, a prediction, if it's possible in a crazy place like Fox, but are they going to run away from or just give up on healthcare next week and try to find some other boogeyman? Have they worn themselves out on that subject, or do they keep at it?
No, they're keeping at it. I mean, they spent, I think they did 10 interviews with Republican attorneys general just in the last 3 days to try to push this legislative attack on the new health care reform bill. They're digging all in. And I'll tell you, Sarah Palin posted on Facebook just today, don't retreat, reload.
Well, let's just hope they can get those angry protesters focusing on court process as a challenge instead of, throwing bricks at people's offices. Eric Burns of Media Matters, thank you very much for joining us on this.
Thank you, Lawrence.